Hola, hola. It's Adrienne, your language learning leader here from Spanish by the Book. And we're here for our second installment in La Estudia de la Biblia. We are studying from the Bible, el capítulo 2, chapter 2, del libro Lucas, the book of Luke en la Biblia. And we're studying in the NIV, or New International Version. That really should say Versión Internacional Nuevo. I'll work on that, but here we go. Vamos. Yo soy Adrienne. Here I am en mi escuela. Yo soy una maestra de español. I am a Spanish teacher, and I take advantage of being out in el porche. And my students sometimes have to say an entrance ticket in order to get into the class. Speaking and listening and just having real life interactions with the language is mucho importante, muy importante. And I like to give my students that oportunidad. And hopefully, you are getting some good listening and vocabulary development from our Estudia de la Biblia Bible study. So here we go. Estamos en Lucas, capítulo 2. Y hoy vamos a leer, today we're going to read versículos 2 y 3. En inglés primero, first in English. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria, and everyone went to their own town to register. Este primer censo se efectuó cuando Cirenio gobernaba en Siria. Así que iban todos a inscribirse, cada cual a su propio pueblo. ¿Qué significa este? What does all of this mean? And what vocabulary and structures de gramática can we learn just from reading our Bible en español? Here we go. So, part by part, this was the first census. Este primer censo. We talked about the census in versículo uno, in verse 1, that it's a cognate. It's a word that looks quite similar en inglés y español, un censo. Este primer censo is using those ordinal numbers, primero, segundo, tercero, cuarto. When you're talking about the first of something, you wouldn't say the one sentence census or the two census. Just like in the date, sometimes you might say today is el tercero de febrero, the 3rd of February, rather than just saying el tres de febrero, which both are correct, but it's just a little more developed language. And when you use ordinal numbers, they kind of function like an adjective. They're describing the census. Which census? El primero censo. And so, like any other adjective, they have to agree in gender and number. So the censo, the census is singular, just talking about one census, and it's masculine, el censo. So you're going to say el primero censo. But sometimes when you're using certain words and the rules for it, don't worry about it. They sometimes drop the O just for the flow that it goes into the census. And so that's how we get this phrase, el primer censo, este primer censo, this first census. Y continuamos. It took place, se efectuó, which brings us to our very first verbo. The verbs are the heart of your sentences, and learning lots of verbs and how they work is going to just be a great language learning tool. So efectuarse means to take place or to be carried out. And you say, Adrienne, that's a really long verb. What's going on there? You just have to look at the stem. Effect, to, are is the ending when you get to the AR, effectu. So anything with effectu is this concept of carrying it out. And you could have lots of different endings depending on who is carrying out the action and when. So we're just going to put it in another sentence just to give us some context. El evento se efectuó durante el invierno. The event took place during the winter. And so we see that stem, effectu, and the O means it, he, she, it, the event took place in the past. Just noting that O with an accent means past tense, a singular person or thing is doing the action. We'll do a little more of this verb work in un momento. So it says, this first sentence census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Este primer censo se efectuó cuando Cireneo gobernaba en Siria. So we're getting to that part there. Cuando Cireneo gobernaba en Siria, while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Let's go word by word. The first part is the word cuando Cireneo gobernaba, when he was governor. Now, this is another one of our question words: who, what, when, where, why, how, that also is used in the sentence just as a transition word. So cuando with an accent, like you see here, a la derecha, to your right, is a question word, when. But cuando without an accent, yes, that one accent on or off makes a difference. Then it means when, like in the sense of just a transition word, or while, during the time. You remember we talked about this in the first verse. With K with an accent means what? Like, what is that? But K without an accent means that I am bigger than, or this is that one. And so you have to look very carefully at these. And of course, look at the contexto, what's going on in the total sentence. So let's get back to our cuando. Cuando meaning when. And in this case, it's not asking a question, it's talking about while. So let's look at an example just from regular, just conversation. Someone might say, estudio cuando los niños duermen. I study when the children sleep. Estudio cuando los niños duermen. You see, there's no accent mark on the letter A, so it's just meaning a transition word. But then if you're using it as a question, you could say, in frustration, cuando duermen los niños? When do the children sleep? And it has an accent there because it's asking one of those question words: who, what, why, when, where. Cuando duermen los niños, rather than just estudio cuando los niños duermen. I study when they sleep. So keep that in mind. The accent makes a difference. So the next part of the verse has the verb gobernar. Gobernar looks a little bit like English. It's a cognate word: to govern or to rule, to run or to manage. You'll find that B's and V's interchange sometimes between English and Spanish. They have a similar sound. So gobernar is to govern. The sentence said, este primer censo se efectuó cuando Cirenio gobernaba en Syria. The first census took place when Quirinius was governor of Syria. And notice how we've got two verbs in the sentence and they're connected. It's almost like it's a compound sentence, and it's connected by that cuando, when. So the first part of it, the first census took place when, and then another complete phrase by itself: Cirenio gobernaba en Syria. Quirinius governed in Syria. But I bet you say, Adrienne, why do they have different endings? They both are talking about somebody doing something in the past, but they are very different. So we're going to have a big grammar study, but really, really fast. Se effectuo is a verb that's in the preterite tense. The first census took place. The census, even though it might have taken a while, was an event that happened one time. It was an event that didn't go on and on and on continuously, as if you said, like, I used to do census. No, this is an event that happened. Whereas gobernaba is using the imperfect tense, and the imperfect tense is generally used for events that happen in the past. They're both past tense, but this is something that went on for a long period of time. Somebody would have been governing for a period of time. It wasn't an event. And so there's different endings to communicate when they happen. The endings for the preterite tense, if it's an AR verb, are right here. You see a, aste, o, amos, aron. The imperfect tense has these abbas on it, and it just lets you know as soon as you see abba that it is past, but it's something that's going on for a period of time. Let's look at some examples. There they are. Effectuo, it took place. Gobernaba, when he was governor over a period of time. So my favorite verb, one of my favorites, is bailar. Bailar is an AR verb, and you can use any verb in the preterite or the imperfect. It depends on the context of the sentence, what you're saying. So if something happened, somebody danced, one-time event, then you'd use these endings here in verde, in green, bailé, bailaste, bailó, bailamos, which bailamos is the same as the present. We dance or we danced, and bailaron, they danced. If something is happening and you're almost kind of saying she used to dance or she danced for many, many years, he, she, whoever it is, then you'd use bailaba, bailabas, bailaba, bailábamos, bailaban. And that indicates that it was something that went on over a period of time. Let's switch to an IR verb, the verb vivir, which means to live. And you see endings that would be useful for an ER verb or an IR verb as opposed to bailar, an AR verb. And so VV, I lived in the house. That one's a hard one to kind of find a one-time way to say it, because usually something like living goes on and on over the period of time, like vivía, vivías, vivía, vivíamos, vivían. But you get the idea that there's different endings depending on whether it's an AR verb or an ER, an IR verb, and whether the action is a one-time event or it's continuing. Usually what happens is imperfect events are going on, and then preterite tense actions tend to interrupt them or be just stuck in the middle of them. They kind of have a flow, and then an event takes place. And that's what we see here in the verse. Este primer censo se efectuó cuando Cirenio gobernaba in Syria. So we have this gobernaba. He was governing in Syria. And if we look a little geographically, you see right here the same Syria that we see on una mapa muy moderno, a very modern map here showing all the different countries around it: Syria, Iraq, Egipto, Turkey. So that region of the world, this is where this is happening. Let's go on to the next part of the verse. Long, really long, so I'll read it all. And everyone went to their own town to register. Así que iban todos a inscribirse, cada cual a su propio pueblo. And everyone went to their own town to register. Así que iban todos a inscribirse, cada cual a su propio pueblo. What's going on there? What's happening? So this is an event that's going on in the past. Everyone went. That one time thing is going on. People are going in. Así can be used many, many ways. Así, it can mean over there. It can mean like this. But this expression here, así que, which we're not going to translate word for word, it just means so or therefore, which is a great way to start our verse. Therefore, for this reason, because there was this census, así que. And in todo el imperio romano, we saw that in our last verse, and we talked about todo el mundo, all the world. But that brings us to just using the word todos. Todos means everyone, todas las personas, todo el grupo, todo el día. You can use todos in so many different ways. And so here it's talking about everyone, todos. Then we come to the verb ir. Ir is a complicated verb. It is irregular. It means to go. I go, you go, he went, they were going. All of those things can come from the verb ir, but ir doesn't follow patterns that other verbs have. When you see something with the verb bailar, almost always you're going to be able to recognize B-A-I-L and know somebody's dancing, and you just figure out the ending. Well, ir es diferente. Ir has many different stems, the front part of the verb, and many different endings. So you have the verb ir, which means to go. And in the present tense, if you just want to say I go, or I am going, you go, he goes, you just would say voy, vas, va, vamos, van. And we're going to just ignore the the vosotros form, because it's only used in España. So we're just going to cover that up. Voy, vas, va, vamos, van, just present tense. And you say, how does a verb that starts with I end up with V? Wait, there's more. In the past tense, the simple past, which is the preterite, it goes fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fueron. How does the verb with I go from I to V to F? Wait, there's more. In the future, if you want to say I will go, it takes that whole ear part and puts a certain set of endings on it, which is really the easiest form, the easiest tense that it has. You just take ear and put iré, irás, irá, iremos, irán. Just showing you how ear can take many different forms, but we still haven't come to the one in our verse. What would that look like? So let's talk about what we saw before in our other verse. The simple past, which is the preterite tense, has a certain set of endings. And for ear, it's very irregular changes to this fui as a stem, fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fueron. And then in the continuous past, something going on for a long time, which is called the imperfect, you get the ibas, iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, iban. And iban is the one in our story. Iban, they were going, meaning over a period of time, people were going to register for this censo. So, así que iban todos a. What are we saying? So, everyone, todos, iban, they went to. Notice how the verb structure is different. Doesn't have to be the same word order. Así que iban todos a inscribirse. Inscribirse is our third verb in this verse. It means to register, to enroll, to sign up. And you're going to recognize a certain part of inscribirse. You see that middle of the stem, scribir. Scribir sounds like scribble. The verb to write in Spanish is escribir. Maybe you think of in English an inscription like on a watch. Maybe you think of in English a prescription. Anytime you see something with scrib, you know something is being written. Something is being drawn. And so in this case, they're going to inscribirse, which is to register, to sign up, to enroll. And I'm sure there was some process of recording their name, their family, and just checking off who was there from this verb inscribirse. So the whole verse, or that part of the verse, says, así que iban todos a inscribirse. So everyone went to be registered. Todas las personas. Let's keep reading our verse. Así que iban todos a inscribirse, cada cual a su propio pueblo. Everyone went to their own town. We already talked about the register and inscribirse. See how the word order is a little diferente? And that's okay. We're just dealing with this part. To their own town. Cada cual a su propio pueblo. Let's dig into this last part of the verse. Cada means each, like cada día debo tomar mi medicina. Each day I should take my medicine. Cada miembro de la familia es alto. Each member of the family is tall. Cada persona es preciosa en los ojos de Dios. Each person is precious in the eyes of God. And another example, cada martes voy a una clase de pilates. Each Tuesday I go to a Pilates class. You see that verb ir there. Cada martes voy a una clase de pilates. I go. Voy. Cada means each. So let's put that together. Cada cual. Now the word cual is another one of those question words that also can be used as a transition word or in an expression. So cual means which one. As you see, like the little girl there, and she has two dresses, and you're asking, ¿cuál es su favorito? Which one is your favorite? Or ¿cuál debo llevar? Which one should I wear? You would use cual to ask which one. But you can also just bring out the one, cada cual, which would be, everyone, a su propio, to their own. This is a children's book that I have. I also review on Spanish by the Book, bilingual children's books, and this is one of my favorites. It's called in Inglés, A Color of His Own, or in Español, Su Propio Color. So what are we saying for our verse? A su propio, to his or her own. Now, why did I put that his or her? Because su can be used to say this is su clase, this is her class. As carro, it's his car. It can be used for his or her, indicating that ownership, and propio, meaning own, like proprietor. And let's put it together. Cada cual a su propio pueblo. Each one, cada cual, to his own, a su propio, town, village, or people. Now, the word pueblo can mean town, village, or people. And I think in this context, we know they were going to their own town, to their own village. But I also wanted you to know sometimes if you see the word pueblo, it could mean people, like a group of people or community. So let's read our verse. Totally in English, totally in Espanol. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria, and everyone went to their own town to register. Este primer censo se efectuó cuando Cirenio gobernaba en Siria. Así que iban todos a inscribirse, cada cual a su propio pueblo. So this event in history is making an impact. When people have to move from one region to another, God is in that. He was in that moving. This is to fill that prophecy that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, which is where the familia de Joseph was from. And so you see just these little details in the verses are super importante to understand la cultura, la historia. I hope you've understood a lot. That's what we do at Spanish by the Book. We're reading, we're learning, we're developing our language skills because every day that we spend some time reading and learning in Espanol, learning happens. Spanish by the Book, where learning happens at the turn of every page. Gracias. Ciao.